So now that we're ready to go to the graph editor, this may no longer be the best user interface layout for us. So let's go to our workspace, and I'm going to change this to animation. This way we have our graph editor on the bottom and our viewport along the top, but I still want to be able to see both viewports. So I can go to Panels, Layouts, 2 panes side by side, and so now I have my perspective and my render cam. Now these are a lot smaller, but I am able to see both of them and my graph editor at the same time. Now working in the graph editor can be really complicated once we have all of this stuff going on. We also have all the squash and stretch, the bend, on top of the rotation translations. So I want to go through this one channel at a time and sort of think about what each channel is doing. But before I do that, I want to set all of these to weighted tangents. So I'm going to select my keys, and I'll notice that out here on the end, I forgot to key everything on the last frame, 124. So I'll go ahead and make sure those are keyed. I'm going to select all my keyframes, and I'm going to go to Curves, Weighted Tangents. Now these will be a little bit easier to work with. Just to make sure they're already set to auto tangents, I'll also go ahead and hit the Auto button. So now I'm ready to start editing these curves. Let's look at them one at a time. So Translate X, when I select it, looks flat. If I select all of these keys and click this button, it will frame it, and now you'll see it's not actually flat. The numbers that are changing are just really small. And so this is important, that you don't just assume what you're seeing here is the only scale. So Translate X is actually the value that's going to control how our character moves forward over time. Now for these first few jumps, we're going to want to set these to linear, and I can probably even delete these in-between keyframes. The reason for that is because I don't want it to look like our character is slowing down at the end of this forward motion. Instead, I want it to feel like it's continuing to move forward at the same speed, and the thing that slows it down is hitting the table and catching itself. I could probably also do the same here, but the thing you may notice in this forward-backward motion is that instead of jumping forward, the spoon seems to jump backwards just a little bit. So I may adjust this and see if I can make this feel like more of a forward progression. So a lot of people have trouble believing this, but for an animation, we are literally going to go through every control and every channel and make sure that this graph is correct. It sounds very tedious, and at first it will be very tedious, but eventually you'll learn that this is just another way of interacting with your character, and you stop seeing a graph and start seeing the way your character moves. Now, I do want to address something that's kind of messing up. We noticed earlier when our character jumps from here up to here, it does a weird twist there. So if I go look at my rotation channels, we can kind of see why that is. So the reason this flip is happening is because there's a lot of different ways this spoon can get from pose A to pose B. Think of it this way. You're probably sitting in a chair right now. If you needed to be facing in the opposite direction, like looking behind you, me and you know that probably the easiest way for that to happen is for you to rotate your chair 180 degrees in one axis until you're pointing in the opposite direction, until you're pointed behind you. However, another method of doing that would be for you to fall backwards and land on your back, roll over onto your face, and then stand back up again, right? That's just not the most intuitive way for that to happen. That's not the way that most of us would do that naturally. And so Maya doesn't know what's natural. Maya just knows you told it to be in one location on one frame and another location on another frame, and it gets there in the best way that it sees fit. but it's not always taking into consideration all of the other curves when it does that. Now we can make it take those other curves into consideration by running a filter on these. Now this is just something, whenever you see rotation that seems like, oh, that's not what I expected that to do, sometimes this is why, and you can run this filter to fix it. It's under curves, and it's this right here. It looks like it says Euler filter, E-U-L-E-R. It's actually pronounced Euler. But if we click that, watch what happens to our curves. So now our keyframe is still in the same location in 3D space, but these values all changed. And so now the way this rotates is going to make more sense. And when it comes down and lands, that feels a little bit better now. So let's look at what we have right now.